My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, I need to share something with you today that will change how you see your own home forever. What I'm about to reveal comes directly from the teachings of our beloved Pope John Paul II, and I guarantee that 98% of Catholics have no idea that this common object in their bedroom could be attracting spiritual darkness into their lives. Before we begin, I want you to think about this question. Have you ever wondered why some homes feel peaceful and blessed, while others seem to carry a heavy spiritual atmosphere? Pope John Paul II discovered something that most of us have completely overlooked, something so simple yet so powerful that it could be affecting your family's spiritual well-being right now as you watch this video. I'm talking about mirrors, specifically where you place them in your bedroom. And I know what you're thinking, how can a mirror be connected to sin or spiritual danger? But stay with me, because what Pope John Paul II taught about this will absolutely astound you. This isn't superstition, my friends. This is rooted in centuries of Catholic wisdom and biblical principles that have been forgotten in our modern world. Let me ask you something personal. Do you have a mirror facing your bed right now? If you do, please don't skip this video. What you're about to learn could be the reason why you've been experiencing restlessness, family conflicts, or that strange feeling that something isn't quite right in your home. Pope John Paul II specifically warned about this, and I'm going to share with you exactly what he said and why it matters for your eternal salvation. You see, our Holy Father wasn't just speaking from tradition. He understood something profound about the spiritual realm that most of us have forgotten. When we sleep, when we're in our most vulnerable state, we need our bedrooms to be sanctuaries of peace and protection. But certain objects, placed in certain ways, can actually invite unwanted spiritual influences into our most sacred space. I want you to comment below right now and tell me, do you have a mirror in your bedroom? Don't be embarrassed, most of us do. But after today, you're going to understand why this might be one of the most important changes you ever make in your home. And please, share this video with your family members, especially your children and grandchildren, because they need to know this truth. The teaching I'm about to share comes from Pope John Paul II's deep understanding of spiritual warfare and the protection of the Christian home. He spent years studying how everyday objects can either bless or burden our spiritual lives. And what he discovered about mirrors will shock you. You know, when I first learned about this teaching, I was skeptical too. I thought, surely something as simple as a mirror can't have spiritual implications. But then I started researching the biblical foundations, the teachings of the early church fathers, and the experiences of countless Catholic families who made this simple change. The results were undeniable. But here's what's really important, and I need you to pay close attention to this. Pope John Paul II wasn't the first to recognize this spiritual principle. This wisdom goes back to the earliest days of Christianity, back to the apostles themselves. It's been preserved in our Catholic tradition for 2,000 years, but somehow, in our modern world, we've forgotten these essential truths about protecting our homes. Let me share with you exactly what Pope John Paul II taught about mirrors in the bedroom. He explained that when we sleep, our souls are in a state of spiritual vulnerability. This is when we dream, when our subconscious minds are active, when we're most open to both divine inspiration and, unfortunately, negative spiritual influences. The bedroom, therefore, must be treated as a sacred space, a place of refuge and protection. Now, mirrors have a unique spiritual property that most people don't understand. They reflect not just physical images, but they can also reflect and amplify spiritual energies present in a room. When a mirror is placed facing the bed, especially at the foot of the bed or on the wall opposite where you sleep, it creates what spiritual directors call a spiritual disturbance field. Pope John Paul II explained that this isn't about the mirror being evil in itself. Glass and silver aren't inherently sinful. But it's about how these objects interact with our spiritual state during sleep. When we're sleeping, our spiritual defenses are naturally lowered. We're not consciously praying, we're not actively resisting temptation, we're in a vulnerable state. A mirror facing the bed can create several spiritual problems that our Holy Father specifically warned about. First, it can cause spiritual restlessness. Have you ever noticed that some nights you just can't get peaceful sleep? You toss and turn, you have strange dreams, you wake up feeling more tired than when you went to bed? This could be directly related to spiritual disturbances in your bedroom environment. Second, mirrors facing the bed can amplify negative emotions and conflicts between spouses. Pope John Paul II understood that the marriage bed is sacred, blessed by God as a place of unity and love between husband and wife. But when spiritual disturbances are present, they can contribute to misunderstandings, arguments, and even more serious marital problems. Third, and this is perhaps most important, mirrors facing the bed can make us more susceptible to spiritual attacks during our most vulnerable hours. This doesn't mean demons are going to appear in your mirror, that's Hollywood nonsense. But it does mean that negative spiritual influences can have easier access to your mind and heart when your natural spiritual defenses are down. Now, I want you to think about your own experience. Have you noticed any of these signs in your own life? Restless sleep, family conflicts that seem to come out of nowhere, a general feeling of uneasiness in your bedroom? If so, I want you to comment below and let me know. Your experience could help other viewers understand the importance of what we're discussing. Pope John Paul II also taught us about the biblical foundations for this wisdom. The Bible tells us to pray without ceasing, but obviously we can't consciously pray while we're asleep. So how do we maintain spiritual protection during those vulnerable hours? By creating a bedroom environment that naturally supports peace and divine protection. In the book of Psalms we read, "I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety." This verse reveals God's intention for our sleep to be peaceful and protected. But this requires us to do our part in creating an environment that invites God's protection rather than spiritual disturbance. The early church fathers understood this principle very well. They taught that Christian homes should be arranged in ways that promote spiritual peace and protection. This included not only what we display in our homes, but also how we arrange our furniture and personal items. St. John Chrysostom, one of the great church fathers, taught that every aspect of a Christian home should reflect our commitment to Christ. This includes our bedrooms, which should be places of rest, peace, and spiritual sanctuary. When we place objects in ways that create spiritual disturbance, we're working against God's desire for our peaceful rest. Now, let me share with you some specific guidance that Pope John Paul II gave about bedroom arrangement. First, if you currently have a mirror facing your bed, it should be moved or covered, especially during nighttime hours. This isn't about destroying the mirror or thinking it's evil. It's about placing it in a location where it won't create spiritual disturbance. The best place for bedroom mirrors is on a wall that doesn't directly face the sleeping area. A side wall can work well, or even the back of a bedroom door. The key is that the mirror shouldn't be reflecting the bed or the sleeping occupants during nighttime hours. Some Catholic families have found it helpful to cover bedroom mirrors with a cloth during sleeping hours. This is actually an ancient Catholic practice that goes back centuries. It's a simple way to eliminate any potential spiritual disturbance while still being able to use the mirror during daytime hours. Pope John Paul II also recommended replacing bedroom mirrors with sacred images whenever possible. A crucifix above the marriage bed, for example, provides spiritual protection and reminds us of Christ's love and sacrifice. Images of Our Lady, patron saints, or biblical scenes can all contribute to a more spiritually peaceful bedroom environment. But let me share something even more important with you. This teaching about mirrors is just one small part of Pope John Paul II's larger vision for the Catholic home. He understood that our homes should be domestic churches, places where every room reflects our faith and invites God's blessing. This means examining not just our mirrors, but all aspects of our home environment. What books are on our nightstands? What images hang on our bedroom walls? What kind of atmosphere do we create in the place where we spend 1/3 of our lives? I want to pause here and ask you to do something important. Look around your bedroom right now. If you're not in your bedroom, think about it carefully. What do you see there that promotes spiritual peace? What might be creating spiritual disturbance? Take a moment to really consider this, because your eternal peace might depend on it. Let me share with you a powerful testimony from a Catholic family in Ohio who made this change after learning about Pope John Paul II teaching. Maria and Giuseppe had been married for 35 years, but in recent years they had been experiencing increasing conflicts and restless sleep. They had a large mirror directly facing their bed, something they had never thought about spiritually. After learning about this teaching, they decided to move the mirror to a side wall in their bedroom. Within just a few weeks, both of them noticed a dramatic improvement in their sleep quality. But more importantly, the frequent arguments and misunderstandings that had been plaguing their marriage began to decrease significantly. Maria wrote to me and said, "I never would have believed that something so simple could make such a difference. But our bedroom feels completely different now. There's a peace there that we hadn't experienced in years." This isn't an isolated case. I've received dozens of similar testimonies from Catholic families who made this simple change. Now, some of you might be wondering about the theological basis for this teaching. Let me explain the deeper spiritual principles that Pope John Paul II understood so well. In Catholic theology, we recognize that the spiritual and physical worlds are intimately connected. What we do in the physical realm has spiritual consequences, and spiritual realities affect our physical experience. This is why we have holy water, blessed metals, sacred images, and other sacramentals. These physical objects carry spiritual significance and can be channels of divine grace and protection. But the reverse is also true. Physical arrangements can sometimes interfere with spiritual peace and protection. The bedroom mirror teaching is based on the principle that our sleeping hours are times of particular spiritual vulnerability. During sleep, our conscious minds aren't actively engaged in prayer or resistance to temptation. This is why Catholic tradition has always emphasized the importance of bedtime prayers and creating bedroom environments that promote spiritual peace. Pope John Paul II also understood that Satan, who Scripture calls the prince of this world, is always looking for opportunities to disrupt God's peace in our lives. He doesn't need to appear dramatically. Often his most effective attacks are subtle disturbances that gradually erode our spiritual strength and family peace. This is why seemingly small things like mirror placement can have significant spiritual consequences. It's not about the mirror having magical powers. It's about creating environmental conditions that either support or hinder spiritual peace and protection. Let me ask you something personal, and I really want you to answer this in the comments. When was the last time you examined your home environment from a spiritual perspective? When did you last consider whether your living space promotes closeness to God or creates obstacles to spiritual growth? Most of us spend a lot of time thinking about whether our homes are physically comfortable, aesthetically pleasing, or financially valuable. But Pope John Paul II challenged us to think about something far more important: whether our homes are spiritually healthy environments that support our journey toward heaven. This bedroom mirror teaching is just the beginning. There are many other aspects of creating a truly Catholic home environment that most families never consider. For example, the images we display, the books we keep, the music we play, even the colors we choose for our walls can all have spiritual significance. But let's focus on what you can do immediately after watching this video. First, examine your bedroom carefully. Look for mirrors that face the bed directly. If you find any, make a plan to relocate them to positions where they won't reflect the sleeping area. Second, consider what positive spiritual elements you can add to your bedroom. A crucifix, an image of Our Lady, a Bible on your nightstand, These simple additions can transform your bedroom into a more sacred space that invites God's protection and blessing. Third, establish or strengthen your bedtime prayer routine. Pope John Paul II emphasized that we should never fall asleep without commending our souls to God's protection. A simple prayer like, "Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit," can provide powerful spiritual protection throughout the night. I also want you to think about your children and grandchildren. If they're living in homes with mirrors facing their beds, they may be experiencing spiritual disturbances that they don't understand. Children are often more sensitive to spiritual atmospheres than adults, and they may be suffering without knowing why. This is why I'm asking you to share this video with your family members. Don't just keep this wisdom to yourself. Our Catholic tradition teaches us that we have a responsibility to share spiritual truth with those we love. Your family needs to know about this teaching from Pope John Paul II. Now, let me address something that some viewers might be thinking. You might be wondering if this teaching about mirrors is just outdated superstition that has no place in modern Catholic life. Let me be very clear about this. Pope John Paul II was one of the most intellectually rigorous and spiritually insightful leaders in church history. He didn't embrace superstition or outdated traditions without theological foundation. This teaching about bedroom mirrors is based on solid spiritual principles that are just as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The spiritual realm hasn't changed just because we have modern technology and different cultural practices. The same spiritual laws that applied to the early Christians apply to us today. In fact, Pope John Paul II often taught that modern life makes these spiritual protections even more necessary. We're bombarded with negative influences through television, internet, social media, and popular culture. Our homes need to be refuges from these influences, places where we can experience God's peace and protection. This is why the condition of our bedroom environment is so crucial. If the place where we spend 8 hours every day is creating spiritual disturbance rather than peace, we're fighting an uphill battle in our spiritual lives. We're starting each day already spiritually weakened rather than refreshed and strengthened. Let me share another powerful testimony with you. Father Michael, a parish priest in Tennessee, started teaching about bedroom mirrors after learning about Pope John Paul II guidance. He was amazed by the response from his parishioners. Families began reporting improvements not just in sleep quality, but in overall family harmony and spiritual peace. One elderly parishioner, Rose, had been suffering from chronic insomnia for over 10 years. She had tried everything: medication, therapy, dietary changes. Nothing worked. Then she learned about the mirror facing her bed and decided to move it. Within a month, her sleep problems had virtually disappeared. But Rose's experience points to something even more important. She told Father Michael, "I realize now that I had been trying to solve a spiritual problem with worldly solutions. Once I addressed the spiritual root, the physical symptoms resolved themselves." This is such an important insight, and I hope you'll remember it. Many of the problems we face in life, relationship conflicts, sleep disturbances, anxiety, family discord, may have spiritual roots that we're not recognizing. When we address these spiritual causes, we often see improvements in areas where worldly solutions had failed. Pope John Paul II understood this connection between spiritual and physical reality better than almost anyone. This is why his teachings about home environment are so practical and effective. He wasn't giving us abstract theology. He was giving us concrete steps to improve our spiritual lives and family relationship. Now, I want to talk to those of you who may be feeling resistant to making this change. Maybe you're thinking that your mirror is expensive or perfectly positioned for practical purposes, or that moving it would be inconvenient. I understand these concerns, but let me ask you this: what's more important, your convenience or your spiritual peace? Pope John Paul II often taught that following Christ requires sacrifice and change. We can't expect to grow spiritually while keeping everything in our lives exactly the same. Sometimes God calls us to make simple changes that demonstrate our willingness to put spiritual priorities above worldly comfort. Moving a bedroom mirror is such a small sacrifice compared to what Christ did for us on the cross. Yet this small change could have profound effects on your spiritual life and family relationship. Isn't it worth trying? I also want to address those of you who might be living in rental properties or situations where you can't permanently move mirrors. Remember, Pope John Paul II's teaching isn't about permanently destroying or removing mirrors. You can cover mirrors during nighttime hours with a cloth or blanket. You can angle mirrors so they don't directly face the bed. There are creative solutions that don't require major renovations. The key is recognizing the spiritual principle and doing whatever you can within your circumstances to apply it. God doesn't expect the impossible from us, but He does expect us to take spiritual wisdom seriously and act on it to the best of our ability. Let me also share with you some additional bedroom guidance that Pope John Paul II gave to Catholic families. He taught that bedrooms should be as free as possible from electronic devices, especially those with screens. Television, computers, and smartphones can all contribute to spiritual disturbance and interfere with peaceful rest. This doesn't mean you need to throw away all your electronics, but consider whether they belong in the bedroom. Many families have found that removing televisions from bedrooms dramatically improves both sleep quality and family relationship. Pope John Paul II also recommended keeping religious books, rather than secular magazines or novels, on bedroom nightstands. The last thing we read before sleep and the first thing we see when we wake up can significantly influence our spiritual state. A Bible, Lives of the Saints, or spiritual devotional books can help orient our minds toward God during those crucial transition times. Another important element of Catholic bedroom environment is the use of holy water. Pope John Paul II encouraged families to bless their bedrooms regularly with holy water, especially after any arguments or conflicts that may have occurred there. This practice helps restore spiritual peace and removes any negative influences that may have accumulated. You can obtain holy water from your parish church, and many priests are happy to provide small bottles for home use. Sprinkling a few drops around your bedroom while saying a simple prayer like, "Lord, bless this space and protect all who rest here," can be a powerful spiritual practice. I want to pause here and encourage you to engage with this content. Please leave a comment below and tell me about your bedroom situation. Do you have mirrors facing your bed? Have you experienced any of the problems we've discussed? Are you planning to make changes based on what you've learned today? Your comments not only help me understand how this teaching is affecting viewers, but they also encourage other people who might be struggling with similar issues. When you share your experience, you're participating in the Catholic tradition of bearing witness to spiritual truth. Also, please give this video a thumbs up if you're finding it helpful. The YouTube algorithm will show this content to more Catholic families who need to hear this message. You could be helping spread Pope John Paul II wisdom to thousands of people who desperately need this spiritual guidance. And make sure you subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell. I regularly share teachings from Pope John Paul II and other great Catholic leaders that most Catholics never get to hear. These aren't just historical curiosities, they're practical spiritual wisdom that can transform your daily life and relationship with God. Now, let me share with you some of the other home environment teachings that Pope John Paul II gave to Catholic families. He understood that creating a truly Catholic home requires attention to many details that most people never consider. For example, he taught about the importance of having a crucifix in every room of the house, not just the living room or dining room. Each room where family members spend significant time should have a visible reminder of Christ's love and sacrifice. This includes bedrooms, kitchens, home offices, and children's rooms. Pope John Paul II also emphasized the importance of family prayer spaces. Every Catholic home should have a designated area for family prayer, even if it's just a small table with a crucifix, Bible, and candles. This space should be kept sacred and used regularly for family devotions. The kitchen, where families gather for meals, should also reflect Catholic values. Images of the Sacred Heart or Our Lady, along with a crucifix, can help remind family members that every meal is a gift from God. Pope John Paul II encouraged families to say grace before every meal, even simple snacks, as a way of maintaining awareness of God's providence. But returning to our main topic, let me emphasize again why the bedroom mirror teaching is so important. Your bedroom is where you spend more time than in any other single location. It's where you begin and end each day. It's where married couples express their love and where children feel most safe and secure. If this crucial environment is creating spiritual disturbance rather than peace, it affects every other aspect of your spiritual life. You might be wondering why your prayer life feels dry, why your family relationships are strained, why you feel spiritually restless. The answer might be as simple as a mirror that needs to be moved. I've received letters from hundreds of Catholic families who made this change and experienced remarkable improvements in their spiritual lives. Not everyone experiences dramatic changes immediately, but most people notice at least some improvement in sleep quality, family harmony, or general spiritual peace. One family from Texas wrote to tell me that after moving their bedroom mirror, their teenage daughter's behavioral problems improved significantly. They had been struggling with her anger and rebellion for months, but within weeks of making this simple change, she became more respectful and cooperative. Another family from New York reported that after covering their bedroom mirrors at night, the husband's chronic nightmares stopped completely. He had been experiencing disturbing dreams for years, but they ceased almost immediately after implementing Pope John Paul II teaching. These aren't coincidences, and they're not psychological tricks. They're examples of how spiritual principles work in the real world. When we align our physical environment with spiritual truth, we create conditions that allow God's grace to work more freely in our lives. This is why Pope John Paul II spent so much time teaching about practical spirituality. He understood that our faith isn't just about Sunday Mass and formal prayers. It's about how we live every aspect of our daily lives, including how we arrange our homes and create environments that either support or hinder our relationship with God. As we near the end of our time together today, I want to challenge you to take action on what you've learned. Don't just watch this video and forget about it. Don't just think, "That's interesting," and move on with your life unchanged. Pope John Paul II teachings are meant to be lived, not just admired. Today, before you go to bed tonight, examine your bedroom carefully. Look for mirrors that face your sleeping area. If you find any, make a plan to move or cover them. You don't have to complete the project today, but make a commitment to address this spiritual issue in your home. Second, consider what positive spiritual elements you can add to your bedroom environment. Visit your parish bookstore or religious goods store and find a beautiful crucifix or image of Our Lady for your bedroom. Create a small prayer corner where you can kneel for a few minutes before bed each night. Third, share this video with at least 3 Catholic family members or friends. They need to know about this teaching, and you might be the only person who will ever tell them. Don't assume someone else will share this wisdom with them. God may be calling you to be His instrument in bringing this spiritual truth to people you love. Finally, I want you to commit to praying for our Holy Father's intentions. Pope John Paul II is now Saint John Paul II, and he continues to intercede for Catholic families around the world. Ask for his prayers as you work to implement his teachings in your own home. Remember, creating a truly Catholic home is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. It requires constant attention to spiritual details and regular examination of whether our environment supports or hinders our journey toward heaven. But don't be overwhelmed by this responsibility. Start with simple changes like the bedroom mirror adjustment we've discussed today. Each small step toward a more Catholic home environment makes the next step easier and more natural. God doesn't expect perfection from us immediately, but but he does expect us to take his spiritual laws seriously and to make genuine efforts to align our lives with his will. When we do this, we experience the peace and joy that he promises to all who seek him with sincere hearts. Thank you for spending this time with me today learning about Pope John Paul II wisdom for Catholic homes. May God bless you and your family as you work to create environments that reflect your faith and invite divine protection. And may St. John Paul II intercede for all of us as we strive to live faithfully in our modern world. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with other Catholic families who need to hear this message. Until next time, may the peace of Christ be with you always.